Hello and welcome to FatbossTV. Today we're going to be looking at Gruul on Heroic in the Blackrock Foundry.
That's right, so this is one of the first bosses we managed to test on the Warlords of Draenor Beta.
Yeah.
So we're seeing Gruul again, and he does have mechanics that are kind of similar to Gruul on live right now.
Which is pretty cool. He also does have new mechanics, so don't be worried. It isn't literally,
it isn't just a copy.
Just fight Gruul again. Like, he's pretty cool, isn't he? Just fight him again.
The fight generally is quite interesting, and of course the heroic testing is like equivalent of normal mode on live right now, but it is flexible between 10 and 30 players.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that they've done the balancing very well for 10 players. We were only able to go in there with 10 players, and it did feel slightly maybe overtuned, and looking at people who did it with 20 or even 30 players, it seemed a lot easier for them because of one ability that does like AoE damage to the raid. It doesn't seem scaled very well for 10 people, but it's an interesting fight nonetheless. And let's go straight into the abilities. So how does this fight work, Alex?
Well, basically, this boss has two different sets of abilities. He doesn't really have two different phases. He just kind of cycles between these two different sets of abilities. However, he does have two shared abilities it will do in both phases. And the first of which is Grond's Rage. Really, all it does is makes it so the more damage he's taken, the more damage he'll deal. So if he's at 50% health, he's going to do more damage than he would have done if he was at 75% health and stuff like that. So the lower his health is, the more damage he'll deal.
And the other ability that he seems to do in both phases, but he seems to do it more in one than the other, is Overhead Smash. This is just a large frontal cone shockwave ability that he'll do on the tanks, usually on the tanks at least. As you can see, the animation for this is completely bugged, and the area that's supposed to take the damage doesn't at all. The only way you can really tell where the damage is going on the beta right now is by seeing which way he's facing. But generally he'll do this on the tank more than anyone else. If you do get hit by it, you'll get knocked up in the air, and you'll probably die. If you're a tank, you may well be able to survive it. But the idea is that you just move out of the way of it. It's a very simple mechanic. Now, in the first phase, we're going to call it a phase because it just makes it easier to explain, he has two abilities that the tanks need to worry about. The first of which is Overwhelming Blows.
Now, this is a debuff that is applied to the tank that increases the amount of damage that is taken by the tank by 10%, and this does last for 60 seconds, right? But the problem is that it will also apply to all targets within 15 yards of the tank. So you got to make sure that your two tanks, when you are tanking this boss, are spread out, because otherwise your stacks will go up and up and up, and you're just going to get destroyed by all the other abilities, mainly Inferno Slice.
So at 100 rage, the boss will cast Inferno Slice. This is an ability that will deal a large amount of physical damage to the tank, but then is immediately followed up by a 100k fire damage like cone ability that splits all damage between all targets around the tank. And it will also leave a debuff that increases the amount of damage you take from fire spells by a huge amount.
Yeah, and the problem is that Inferno Strike, as it kind of is mentioned, is a fire ability.
Yeah.
So you're just going to get destroyed if you get hit by this over and over again, and this debuff does last for 30 seconds. However, he kind of does Inferno Slice maybe every 16 or so seconds.
Yeah, so the way that you deal with this ability is that you set up two groups of players and then rotate which group gets hit by the Inferno Slice when it does eventually come up. But obviously the tanks need to be very careful that when they do position the boss into that selection of players, that they don't also get hit by overwhelming blows, because that is entirely possible. So you need to make sure that you taunt the boss or face the boss into that group of players as late as you possibly can, so they get hit by the Inferno Slice, but they don't get hit by the overwhelming blows. And then as soon as that group's hit, you then want to make sure that you get ready for the next group to get hit in 15 seconds time. And of course the tanks, you need to keep swapping around 60 seconds just so that the overwhelming blows doesn't stack up and you get to the point where you take too much damage. Now, it is entirely possible for the tanks to solo the Inferno Slice, but you need to use very, very large cooldowns in order to do so, and it doesn't appear to be the intended way of doing it, but we did do it a couple of times. But yeah, it's not what you'll probably have to do on live.
Now, the last ability that it'll be doing in this phase, so to speak, is a very good old-fashioned petrifying slam, Lawrence. Oh, yeah. It's nostalgia-tastic. If you don't know how this ability works, basically what the boss will do is it will start doing some ticking damage to you over 5 seconds and start slowing you. Puts like a stacking debuff on you that once it reaches like its maximum stacks, you get turned into stone. And then afterwards, Gruul will just shatter you, and it will deal damage to you and anyone around you within 8 yards. So say you're all stacked up together, and then he'll like shatter you all at the same time, you're just gonna die.
Yeah, you're just all gonna do AoE damage to each other, you'll all die. So the idea is when this mechanic does come in, you quickly spread out within that sort of, it's about 3 to 5 second period. Make sure that you're like more than 8 yards away from each other. You'll blow up, and then you want to group up again, ready for taking the Inferno Slices. Also, throughout this phase, he'll sort of do bursty AoE damage on the raid occasionally. He'll just slam his fist on the ground. The amount of damage this deals is, like, totally underwhelming, and it's almost not noticeable.
Yeah.
There's a little animation with it, but all the animations on this fight are actually temporary, so they're going to be changed before they do hit live. Now, after so long, we couldn't really work out exactly when he does switch into this other phase. We call it another phase. It's not really another phase, but what he'll do an ability called Crumbling Roar. Now, when he does do this ability, the boss essentially sort of goes into AFK mode and doesn't really do too much. And he will start caving in areas of the roof that players need to dodge. Now, it's really simple to dodge them. Basically, if you watch the way that they spawn, the animations, you can see the large circles where they're going to land. You just stand near the first one that spawns, and as soon as that disappears and something lands into it, you then just move into it.
Yeah, because the same spot at the moment anyway, the same spot on the beta, it won't be hit again. So you just need to find where that first spot is, or if a spot just has been hit, just go into it
Just move into it afterwards. That's all you need to do. Just as soon as one has landed, move into that land area.
However, if you do get hit by this, you'll be stunned and like...
Yeah, you just get knocked down. You do take a lot of damage, and it is noted in the dungeon journal that this is supposed to be a insta-kill mechanic. It's supposed to do a large amount of damage. On the beta, it wasn't. It was doing about half your health. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting mechanic. And then after he has caved in the roof and you've dealt with that mechanic, he'll start doing world shaking, which is just AoE damage to the entire raid. It does hit quite hard, and obviously as the boss's health goes down, this is where this one's going to become a problem, because you need to start AoE healing more and more and more. And apart from that, he'll just keep doing his overhead smash. And this is the phase where he'll use it the most. He doesn't even seem to melee hit while this is going on. He literally only seems to just do this. I don't know if that's intentional. But it seems really easy to deal with, because you don't need to heal the tanks, you just heal the raid and that's it. It's just AoE.
So after this phase, he'll just jump back into the first phase again, and then back into the second phase, and he'll just keep going between those two phases until either you're dead, or he's dead, really.
Yeah, it's literally rinse and repeat until that point, but it's the mechanic of the Grom's Rage, the buff that makes it so he deals more damage the more percentage of health you've taken out, that is probably going to be the killer on this fight. The mechanics are relatively simple. The tanks probably have the hardest job, because you need to really watch out for the overwhelming blows, make sure that you don't actually give each other the buff, and that you are spread out 15 yards, because if you do both get the buff, it's going to be a pain in the arse for you to both drop them. You pretty much have to wait until he starts doing his Crumbling Roar, where all the ceiling falls down, before you can drop it again, because during that time he doesn't cast it, he just sort of stands there AFK. And then of course the tanks also have to deal with Inferno Slice, which is a very nasty ability, especially if you're only running with 10 players like we did. It was fucking hitting really, really hard. But we did manage to kill the boss. I think we got him to 22% on our best try, but there were guilds out there who did kill him, who were able to bring more than 10 people. But a very interesting fight. Really like it. It's
definitely a good first boss. Like, in all fairness, it has more mechanics than most first bosses do.
Yeah, and for Mythic in the Dungeon Journal, there's already at least one other mechanic coming into the fight. So
it should be interesting to see.
It's looking pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
But thank you very much for watching, guys. And as more raid testing does become available, me and Alex will be sure to cover it and share it with you guys. If you did enjoy the video, do drop us a like. Of course, we'll be on the live stream, so we'll see you there. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.